I stepped into the restaurant with my children, shaking the cold off our jackets, praying that today would remain peaceful. The atmosphere plummeted the second we entered, as if we brought a curse inside. My father looked up from his plate, his gaze narrowing with that standard blend of irritation and critique. I couldn't grasp why the mood evaporated, why every conversation died until he spoke up and ruined everything. Before I share the details, tell me, where are you watching Revenge Story podcast from? And when you hear the outcome, please like and subscribe for more brave winds of thought. My name is Sarah, and if you witnessed us entering that Boston lunch place that day,
You would have believed.
we were simply a normal group attempting to find some much-needed seasonal joy. I squeezed my kids' palms, trying not to observe how their knuckles whitened the nearer we moved to the group. They have learned to scan a space the way some spies read hidden codes, silently, instantly preparing for the tension they sense is arriving. Growing up, my relatives never needed to raise their volume to make me feel out of order. It occurred in subtle acts. My father's groan when I joined the meal, the way discussions shut like vaults, the rigid grins that never reached their souls. For decades, I promised myself it was all in my mind. But raising a family alters how you view truth. You quit making allowances for people who should know kindness. Seasonal parties were consistently the worst. My father's branch of the tree adored the theater massive floral arrangements, matching clothes, boisterous speeches that concealed darker facts. I used to arrive trying to fit in, praying someone would validate the attempt. But the older I grew, the more I understood their love had fences, and I stood eternally outside the gate. This lunch was intended to be easy. I had baked vanilla scones at sunrise, brought spare scarves, practiced soft reminders with the boys about being calm. I needed them to feel accepted, even if I wasn't. When we stepped in, I saw my dad resting near the head of the setting, smiling at something my sister said. For a second, I let myself imagine this time could be unique, that perhaps the harshness I had known for so long was just history projecting itself onto the now. But the cues appeared fast, sharp as ice. My mom's gaze widened when she spotted us, like I had stumbled into the wrong gala. She rallied quick, forcing a smirk and gripping my wrist with fingers hard enough to hurt. My aunt nodded stiffly, barely shifting a stool over for my youngest. Chatter stalled around us, then started up again, but with a note I recognized all too well. A note that meant I shouldn't have visited without ever voicing the phrase. My boys, bless them, worked. My son taught his little brother how to shape the linen napkin into a sailboat, whispering puns to make him chuckle. I sat there acting everything was fine, drinking liquid that tasted like iron, hoping my dad wouldn't see how badly I was striving to vanish. But of course he saw. He always did. And instead of appearing joyful to see his grandsons, he appeared overburdened. Like our arrival threw off the image he needed the public to view. Still, I remained kind. I helped my toddler grab the berry tray, asked my mom how her job was, even slid the cream to my dad despite the way he dodged my face. I dreamed if I kept giving, maybe the wall would break. I was wrong, and the next sounds out of his lips would confirm it. The tone began with something as tiny as a chuckle, one of those dry rehearsed ones my dad gave when he needed the table's focus. He leaned back in his seat, banging his knife against his flute. Not enough to cause a fuss, but enough to launch a signal. Discussions faded, faces turned. Even my boy stopped. I was slicing my youngest's bagel into bits when I sensed it, a glare that seared deeper than the heat drifting off the meal. I glanced up, and there he sat, my dad, eyes fixed on me with a grimace that never reached his eyes. A grimace I had grown up confusing for wisdom, only to realize soon it was hostility dressed up in manners. "Everything good?" I asked softly, aiming to stop things from exploding too fast. He swept his gaze over my shawl hung behind me, the boy's mittens drying on the top of a seat. The tiny chaos that arrives with raising toddlers, and then back to me. The sneer grew slow, twisting just enough that my spirit sank. This was built to be a good time. He spoke loud enough for the two groups beside us to catch. "Why did you appear?" The area didn't go quiet. It died. My aunt's arm froze over the juice pitcher. My sister's partner paused mid-chew. Even the server, who had been pouring water, seemed to stumble like she had walked into a social war zone. I felt the insults strike me before my mind could handle them. They crashed against years of tiny digs, remarks about how I cooked food, heavy jabs about how I never quite matched, comments about how the boys were a burden.
But this was the first moment he had voiced it so purely, so boldly, so cruelly.
"Why did you appear?" My chest constricted around dust. I stared once, twice, fighting not to weep in front of my offspring. A standard burn rushed up my face, the sort that rises from being shamed in open. I parted my lips, needing to speak something calm, something that wouldn't dump kerosene on the fire, but nothing came out. My mom looked away, striving to straighten the glassware. My brother cleared his voice but spoke zero. No one jumped in. No one ever would. The boys were the only ones who spotted the threat. They always felt it before the elders confirmed it. My son stiffened in his spot, eyes darting between me and his grandfather, the panic on his features louder than any slur my dad could hurl. He whispered, barely vocal over the rattling china. "Mom, why is he loud?" I blinked, willing my pulse steady. He is not loud, I lied, though every part of me was vibrating. My dad laughed one brief ugly noise, and that was it. The second the earth truly split beneath us, my son leaned nearer, tone weak. "Should we exit?" His query cut through the noise, heavier than my father's attack. It wasn't just worry. It was dread, and that dread wasn't mine to accept anymore. I stared at my lad, then at my toddler, pulling at his collar, trying to make himself tiny. In that moment, the decades of reasons of praying for shifts, of reducing myself for the hope of quiet, every ounce of it died. And for the first time in a dark time, something inside me stood up taller. What I spoke then would alter history. I didn't reply to my son right then. I couldn't. My blood was rushing.
So hard it felt like the whole building could sense it.
The lunch gossip around us slowly came back to life, strangers pretending not to watch while doing a horrid job of masking it. My father had already returned to his meal, behaving as though he hadn't just sliced me out of the gathering, like gristle from a steak. My son's fingers moved into mine again. Softer, colder. "Mom," he murmured, "please." That single term, please, wasn't about humiliation. It was about safety. My boys had spent ages seeing me twist, myself in knots to fit, inside this group's broken version of worthy. They had seen enough to learn when the mark had been broken, even if they couldn't title it. I pulled in a gas that rattled in my ribs. The room smelled like fried eggs and sweet cocoa, but underneath it, sadness. Old ancient sadness I'd swallowed since birth. I was so sick of the flavor. I shoved my stool back. The wood grated harshly against the floor. Slicing through the room sounds like a sword. Discussion stopped. Necks snapped. My toddler looked up at me with huge eyes. Silver fork paused midair. Yes, I spoke firmly. Right now. My dad didn't even look up. That stung worse than the sneer. Arrogance as rejection. Erasure disguised as boredom. If he had screamed, it would have meant I counted enough to trigger him. Silence told a deeper truth. He decided I was below response. I rose, assisting my toddler into his jacket, tying his hood closely so he wouldn't feel hurried. My son snatched his scarf, teeth locked in a strength he shouldn't know yet. I could sense every eye on us. Some caring, some nosy, a few happy.
It wasn't their group falling apart on a winter morning.
My mom reached out like she might utter something, but her palm stopped halfway, fingers folding back into her lap. A lifetime of walking behind my dad kept her mute. She couldn't move toward me without moving away from him. And she had never picked me before, so I didn't stay. We marched out together, the three of us, the gate clicking shut behind us with a dull boom that felt far heavier in my soul. Outside, the wind bit around us violently. But the chill felt purer, crisp, real, free of acting. My son slid his palm into mine again. "Good job, Mom," he said. I hadn't claimed that honor yet, but I would. An hour later, my dad would rue every phrase he had spoken. An hour later, my dad lamented his actions. It didn't start with yelling or glass smashing or some wild act straight out of a film scene. It started with something much calmer, a turn no one could miss. The boys and I had gone back to my house, a tiny rental overlooking one of those Boston roads where the ice drifts up in the alleys like gray wool. I brewed hot cocoa the way they loved it, too sweet. Shaved chocolate, nutmeg on top, aiming to soothe something deeper than our skin. I guessed that would be the close of it. Another scar I had learned to heal from. Another tale my boys would bear even when they tried not to. But then my cell rang. It was my mom. Not a chat. She wouldn't risk my dad catching her tone change. A text. Something occurred. "I think you should hear." Before I could reply, another alert flashed. This time from my sister, then my cousin, then my brother's spouse. All forms of the same news he slipped up. I looked at the screen, stunned until the facts started sliding into view. When we exited the bistro, my dad tried to twist the narrative to paint my leaving as hysterical or wild. He awaited his standard crowd of bobbing necks, but strangers had viewed the whole event. They caught every slur, and for the first time in a long time, no one was ready to act otherwise. My aunt, who had always stayed silent to dodge fights, finally stood up. She told him she was mortified for him. Mortified that his grandsons viewed him shame their parent. My sister's partner, who rarely speaks, said my father's conduct was vile, not tired. The server even jumped in. She had listened. She had watched everything. And seemingly she told the group that she couldn't fathom talking to her own child that way. I imagined my dad resting there, his power falling through his palms like thawing snow. And for once he had no one left to act for. No stage, no command. But the true shifting point wasn't the remarks. It was what occurred then, while the group faced him. The shift supervisor walked to their booth, gripping a binder of listed costs. Items my dad had put under a prior tab. Holiday lunch was pricey, and he had taken ego in paying everything. Except he hadn't. His visa had failed twice. He tried another, failed again. The boss, in a cool but strict voice, asked if someone else at the party could pay the debt. The whole massive family, the exact folks he had tried to wow, witnessed his skin turn the kind of red that even Boston frost couldn't cause. My mom panicked, and Terry had to dig out her own cash to pay the fees. My dad hissed at her under his breath, but the slurs didn't count anymore. The space had already viewed the real. The guy who lived so hard about status couldn't keep up the mask. That was the second. That was the time he hated everything, not because he had broken me, not because he had crushed my boys, but because losing power in public was the one shame he had never excused anyone else for. My device rang again. A new text from him. Just 2 terms, come back. Not an apology, not even a plea. A order, sudden, reactive, the way he had talked to me my whole path. I looked at the glass until the words swam. My thumb halted for a moment, then pressed video chat. If he needed to speak, he could hear my tone firm and strong. He answered instantly. Sarah, this is crazy. Folks are making a huge scene out of dust. Just drive back. No, I spoke quiet. Not the angry sort, the sure sort. Like he couldn't grasp a term that plain, that real. No, he echoed. I saw him holding the mobile teeth set, praying for the weak version of me to return. The one who folded instead of stood. I didn't offer him that. You humiliated me in front of my toddlers, I spoke calmly. In a space full of strangers, and you have done it for decades. I'm finished acting, it is okay. He breathed loudly. Sarah, you are spinning. No, I am not spinning anything. For once, I am voicing the fact without softening it to save your pride. Another pause, a deeper one. I went on. My boys warrant kindness, and so do I. We are not driving back. You are wrecking this circle, he spat. I let out a sigh that felt like it had been stuck in my ribs for eras. The circle was wrecked because no one ever held you responsible, I said. Today wasn't about me showing up. It was about you revealing who you truly are. He didn't answer. Perhaps because there was nothing left to voice. Maybe because he finally saw that the power he kept so hard was lost. Maybe for the first time he felt the price of his own rage. I hung up before he could find his balance. Behind me, my son was staring, focused but calm. Was that Grandpa, he said? Yeah, I spoke, bending to find his eyes. And we are fine. Good, he said. Because he made you cry. Boys don't need huge speeches. They just need the fact. And the fact was clear. Exiting wasn't failure. It was the first barrier I had ever built. That evening, as the town glow danced across our glass, I felt something turn. The start of calm. Tiny but true. And before we settled in for the sleep, I told my boys something I should have told myself years ago. Love shouldn't make you feel tiny. If you want more tales like this, brave tales about standing up, speaking out, and claiming your life, support us on Revenge Story Podcast by subscribing. You will get alerted the second a new video goes live. The next sunrise, Boston was still, the sort of winter peace that makes everything feel lighter, even the parts that still ache. I cooked waffles while the boys fought happily over who got the sweeter plate, their joy filling the room that used to feel too quiet after family events. For once, there was no weight in my heart, no planned defenses for why someone had treated me coldly. My cell rang a few times throughout the day, my mom checking in, my aunt apologizing for not standing up faster, a sister sending a smile image and nothing else, but not a single text from my dad. And oddly, that gap felt like freedom rather than pain. In the afternoon, I took the boys to a tiny field near our house. We strolled along the frozen loop while they tossed ice into the sky. Their smiles so warm, it made the burn of yesterday feel like it belonged to someone else. I knew then that exiting the lunch wasn't just about shielding them from shame. It was about picking a path where their parents stood proud, not bent. We marched home hand in hand, brighter, bolder, finally ours. That evening, after the boys fell asleep, I sat by the glass and let the peace land. Walking away hadn't ruined my family. It had finally stopped them from ruining me. Sometimes love means drawing a wall, even when it stuns everyone on the other side of it. If this story feels familiar, if you have ever had to choose your own peace, share your experience below, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story.